the general said. "This won't work." And Bruce Lee asked for 12 seconds. At second 12, the general couldn't breathe. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. August 1969. The temperature inside the training gymnasium hovered near 90 degrees despite the industrial fans rotating overhead. Sunlight cut through high windows and thick beams, illuminating dust particles suspended in the humid air. 47 soldiers stood in formation along the perimeter of the training mat. Green berets. Special Forces candidates. Men who had survived Hell Week, who could march 50 miles with full packs, who knew 17 ways to kill with their bare hands. They were watching a demonstration they'd been told was mandatory but not why. At the front of the gymnasium stood Major General Harrison Webb, 32 years of military service, 2 tours in Korea, 1 in Vietnam, chest heavy with medals and ribbons. His arms were crossed. His jaw was set. His expression carried the particular skepticism of a man who had seen every martial arts charlatan, every flashy demonstration, every supposed, ancient technique, that crumbled under real combat conditions. And across from him, barefoot on the worn training mat, stood Bruce Lee. No uniform. No rank. Just a simple black shirt and loose training pants. 5 feet 7 inches. 135 pounds. Calm. Still. Waiting. Bruce didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The demonstration had been arranged 3 weeks earlier through channels General Webb still didn't fully understand. The Pentagon had received a request. Someone high up wanted Fort Bragg to evaluate unconventional hand-to-hand combat techniques being developed by a martial arts instructor in Los Angeles. Webb had reviewed the file with growing irritation. Bruce Lee. Actor. Martial arts teacher to Hollywood celebrities. No military background. No combat experience. Just another flashy performer trying to sell something to the armed forces. General Webb, the Pentagon liaison had said over the phone. This isn't a sales pitch. This is an evaluation. The man has developed techniques that might have tactical applications. We need your assessment. My assessment, Webb had replied, is that we don't need Hollywood stuntmen teaching my soldiers how to fight. But orders were orders. So here they stood. Bruce had arrived that morning without fanfare. No assistants. No camera crew. No demonstration equipment. Just a small duffel bag with a change of clothes and a thermos of tea. He bowed respectfully to General Webb when they met. Thank you for your time, General. Webb hadn't bowed back. Let's make this quick, Mr. Lee. My men have real training to get back to. Now, standing on the mat with 47 Special Forces soldiers watching, General Webb gestured at Bruce with barely concealed contempt. So you're here to teach us how to fight, Webb said loud enough for everyone to hear. You understand that these men are trained in combatives. Real combat. Not movie choreography. I understand, Bruce said quietly. And you think you're, what did the file call it? Jeet Kune Do? You think that has tactical military applications? I think it has practical applications. For anyone. Webb's jaw tightened. Mr. Lee, I've been in this military for longer than you've been alive. I've seen men fight for their lives in the mud and blood. And I'm telling you right now. He gestured at Bruce's relaxed stance. This won't work. The gymnasium went silent. 47 soldiers waited. Bruce didn't react. Didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. He just stood there, breathing normally, his hands loose at his sides. Then he spoke, and his voice carried through the entire space despite being barely above conversational volume. Give me 12 seconds, General. Webb blinked. What? 12 seconds? On this mat. You and me. If I can't prove the effectiveness of these techniques in 12 seconds, I'll leave immediately, and you'll never hear from me again. The soldiers shifted. A few exchanged glances. This was unprecedented, a civilian challenging a general to physical combat in front of witnesses. Webb's face flushed red. Are you seriously? 12 seconds? Bruce repeated, his tone completely neutral. Not to hurt you. Not to embarrass you. Just to demonstrate control. Technique. The difference between force and precision. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Webb stared at Bruce Lee for a long moment. The smart move would be to end this now. Dismiss the civilian. Get back to real training. But something in Bruce's calm certainty, and the fact that 47 soldiers were watching, made refusal impossible. Fine, Webb said, stepping onto the mat. 12 seconds. Then you're done here. Bruce bowed slightly. Rules? No rules. Real combat doesn't have rules. Then real combat rules apply, Bruce said. He turned to address the soldiers directly. Watch the hands. Watch the distance. Watch what happens when technique replaces force. General Webb assumed a fighting stance, weight balanced, hands up, the standard military combative's position he'd taught for years. Solid. Grounded. Protected. Bruce stood completely relaxed. Hands at his sides. Weight on his back leg. No guard position at all. Whenever you're ready, Webb said, certain this would end in 3 seconds, not 12. Bruce didn't move. Webb waited. 5 seconds passed. Bruce remained motionless. Are you? Webb started. Second 1. Bruce's right hand moved. Not a punch. Not a strike. Just a small movement forward, fingers extended, that covered half the distance between them before Webb even registered motion. Webb's instinct kicked in. He threw a straight punch. Fast, efficient, the way he'd been throwing punches for 30 years. Second 2. Bruce's hand redirected Webb's punch with minimal contact. Less than a pound of pressure, sending it past Bruce's shoulder into empty air. Webb's momentum carried him slightly forward, his balance compromised for a fraction of a second. Second 3. Bruce's other hand touched Webb's extended elbow, not a strike, a placement, and applied pressure at an angle that Webb's body had no structural answer for. Webb's arm folded inward despite every muscle in his body trying to resist. Second 4. Bruce stepped inside Webb's guard. Not aggressive. Not forcing. Just occupying space that had suddenly become available. His shoulder was now aligned with Webb's center of mass. Second 5. Webb tried to throw his other hand. Bruce's arm was already there, redirecting again, creating a spiral of movement that used Webb's own force against him. Second 6. Bruce's foot hooked behind Webb's ankle. Not a kick. Not a sweep. Just position. Second 7. Pressure. Not strike pressure. Structural pressure. Bruce's body creating a geometry that Webb's body couldn't maintain balance against. The general began to tip backward. Second 8. Webb tried to grab Bruce's shirt for balance. Bruce allowed it but shifted his weight, turning Webb's grab into leverage that accelerated his fall. Second 9. Webb hit the mat. Not slammed. Controlled. Bruce had literally placed him there, managing his descent so it was firm but not injurious. Second 10. Bruce's hand was on Webb's throat. Not squeezing. Just present. 2 fingers resting on the carotid artery with exactly enough pressure to make Webb acutely aware that his air supply was being controlled. Second 11. Webb tried to move. Couldn't. His arms were pinned, not by force, but by angle. Bruce's knees were positioned such that any attempt to bridge or roll would only increase the pressure on Webb's own joints. Second 12. Breathe, Bruce said quietly, and removed his hand from Webb's throat. The gymnasium was dead silent. Bruce stood up smoothly and extended his hand to help General Webb to his feet. Webb, still trying to process what had just happened, stared at the offered hand for a long moment before accepting it. Away from the cameras, Bruce made a choice no one expected. Webb got to his feet, his face flushed not from exertion but from something else. Confusion. Humiliation. And beneath those, something he hadn't felt in years, genuine uncertainty about what he knew. The soldiers hadn't moved. Hadn't made a sound. 47 men trained in combat had just watched their general, a man who could outfight most of them, get controlled like a child by someone who weighed barely more than 130 pounds. Bruce stepped back, creating space, his posture non-threatening. "General Webb," he said, addressing him with the same respectful tone he'd used when they met. "May I explain what just happened?" Webb's jaw worked. Pride warred with something else. Finally, "Yes." Bruce turned to address the entire room, but his words were clearly directed at Webb. "What you felt wasn't strength. It was geometry. Angles. Timing. Every movement you made, every punch, every attempt to grab, every shift in weight, created an opening. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the human body has structural limitations. I didn't overcome your force. I redirected it. Used it. Made it work against itself." He paused, letting that sink in. Military combatives teaches you to be strong, fast, aggressive, and those things matter. But when you meet someone who understands your structure better than you do, strength becomes a liability. Because the harder you push, the easier you are to redirect. Webb listened, his arms no longer crossed, his skeptical expression replaced by something closer to focus. Bruce continued. "Jeet-Kune-Do isn't about being better at fighting. It's about being smarter than the fight. It's about seeing 3 seconds ahead. About understanding that a fight decided in 12 seconds doesn't need a 13th. He looked directly at Webb. "You could beat me in strength. In endurance. Probably in raw physical power. But I don't fight those fights, General. I fight the fight that ends before you realize it started. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever." General Webb stood on that mat, in front of his soldiers, and did something that would define the rest of his military career. He extended his hand to Bruce Lee. Not for a handshake. For something else. "Teach us," Webb said. Bruce looked at the offered hand, then at Webb's face, reading the genuine request there. "General, I'm not here to replace your training. Your men need everything they already know. Strength. Conditioning. Weapons. Tactics. I can't teach those things." "Then teach what you can," Webb said. "Teach us how to see 3 seconds ahead. For the next 8 hours. Well past the scheduled 90-minute demonstration, Bruce Lee worked with those 47 Special Forces soldiers. Not teaching them kung fu. Not teaching them movie techniques. Teaching them how to read body mechanics. How to use minimal force. How to end confrontations before they escalated. General Webb participated in every drill. He let himself be thrown. Controlled. Demonstrated on. Every time Bruce put him on the mat, Webb got up and asked, "How did you do that?" And Bruce would explain. Patiently. Precisely. Breaking down the geometry of each movement. By the end of the day, those soldiers understood something profound. Bruce Lee wasn't there to prove he could beat them. He was there to show them a different way of thinking about combat entirely. 3 weeks later, General Webb submitted a 20-page report to the Pentagon recommending the integration of Lee-style defensive redirection techniques into advanced Special Forces training. The report included this line. "In 32 years of military service, I have never encountered a combat methodology that so thoroughly defeats force with precision. Mr. Lee's techniques are not theoretical. They are devastatingly practical. And they work." The Pentagon filed the report. Some recommendations were quietly adopted into training programs. Others were classified and tucked away. But the soldiers who were there that day, the 47 witnesses who saw 12 seconds change everything, they remembered. Some went on to teach what they'd learned. Others simply carried it with them, a different way of thinking about strength and control. General Webb kept a handwritten note Bruce had given him at the end of that day. It read, "Absorb what is useful. Reject what is useless. Add what is specifically your own." Webb framed it and hung it in his office. Not as a souvenir. as a reminder that 32 years of experience meant nothing if you stopped learning. Years later, when asked about that day, Webb said something that became legend among special forces. "Bruce Lee put me on my back in 12 seconds. But he spent 8 hours lifting me back up. That's the difference between a fighter and a teacher." Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The footage was never released. The Pentagon classified the session. But the 47 soldiers who were there? They told the story. Quietly. Carefully. To the right people. And every one of them remembered. 12 seconds. That's all it took to prove that real power isn't about winning. It's about control. Bruce Lee never returned to Fort Bragg. But his techniques did. Quietly integrated. Never credited. Just absorbed into the training, the way water flows into cracks. The way he would have wanted it.